Lieutenant Elena Chen stared at the ceiling of the Intergalactic Military Academy's training hall, counting the floating, luminescent orbs that served as lights. She'd reached 47 when the booming voice of today's guest lecturer interrupted her mental inventory. "Behold, cadets, you gaze upon the finest warrior the Drachnid Empire has produced in 3 centuries. Elena rolled her eyes so hard she worried they might get stuck. Warlord Cathax, their guest instructor, stood 8 feet tall with iridescent scales and enough medals on his chest to make him a walking security risk. Every step he took caused his decorations to chime like the galaxy's most annoying wind chime. In my illustrious career, I have conquered 17 worlds, defeated 300 worthy opponents in single combat, and—" Cathax paused dramatically, his head frills expanding. "Established the most effective combat training program in known space. If his head gets any bigger, he's going to need a gravity generator just to keep it upright," Elena muttered to her classmate, a silicon-based life form named Exthal, who vibrated in silent amusement. The Intergalactic Military Academy's first interspecies training program had seemed like a great idea on paper. Bring together the finest young warriors from across the galaxy, share knowledge, promote understanding between species. Nobody had mentioned it would involve listening to megalomaniacal lizards with delusions of grandeur. Cathax stalked between the rows of cadets, his tail swishing with what he probably thought was majestic grace. "The problem with you soft-skinned species," he declared, stopping in front of the human section, "is that you lack the natural advantages that make true warriors. No claws, no scales, no venomous glands." Elena bit her lip to hold back a laugh. She'd grown up in Singapore, trained in mixed martial arts since she could walk, and spent her teenage years doing parkour across the city's skyline. But sure, she was just a soft, weak human. "Something amuses you, Cadet?" Cathax's multifaceted eyes fixed on Elena. "Not at all, sir," Elena replied, keeping her face carefully neutral. "Just admiring your impressive medal collection. The chiming is particularly melodious." A few nervous titters rippled through the assembled cadets. Cathax's frills darkened to a dangerous purple. "Perhaps you'd care to demonstrate your species' capabilities in a more practical manner?" "Oh, I couldn't possibly," Elena said, her voice dripping with false modesty. "I mean, how could a soft, weak human hope to stand against such a legendary warrior?" Cathax's tail twitched. The assembled aliens held their breath, or whatever passed for breathing among their species. "Is that sarcasm I detect, Cadet?" "Me? Sarcastic?" Elena placed a hand over her heart in mock shock. "I would never dream of it, sir. We humans save our dreams for important things, like surviving against naturally advantaged species." The Warlord's frills fully extended now, displaying an impressive array of colors that would put a neon sign to shame. "Very well, Cadet Chen. Tomorrow at dawn we shall see how your human wit fares against Drachnid combat expertise, unless, of course, you wish to withdraw your implicit challenge." Elena stood, snapping to attention with a smile that would have made a shark proud. "Wouldn't miss it for all the medals in the galaxy, sir." As the training hall erupted into excited chatter, Elena caught Exthal's crystalline eye. "So," she whispered, "want to help me plan how to take down a warlord?" Exthal's response was a series of musical chimes that roughly translated to, "You humans are completely insane." "That's not a no," Elena grinned, already plotting tomorrow's entertainment. After all, if she was going to get into trouble for sass, she might as well earn it properly. News of the impending fight spread through the academy faster than a quantum transmission. By dinner time, Elena found herself at the center of an impromptu betting ring in the mess hall. "Current odds are 50-1 in favor of Cathax," announced Zix, a tentacled Merzian who'd appointed himself bookkeeper. His appendages waved excitedly as he managed multiple holographic betting screens. "Though I must note that humans are showing a disturbing tendency to bet against these odds." That's because we know something you don't, Elena said, taking a massive bite of her burger. The sight of her eating so casually before tomorrow's fight had drawn a crowd of fascinated aliens. "And what's that?" asked a particularly brave Venusian. "We're really good at making bad decisions work out in our favor," Elena replied with a wink, causing several nearby crystalline beings to vibrate in confusion. Her mind drifted back to her childhood dojo in Singapore, where Master Wong had first taught her the art of reading opponents. "Your greatest weapon," he'd always said, "isn't your fists or feet. It's making them think they've already won." A shadow fell across her table, and Elena looked up to find Captain Rodriguez, her human combat instructor, wearing an expression that suggested he'd just swallowed something particularly sour. "Cadet Chen," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose, "please tell me you're not actually planning to fight a Galactic Warlord tomorrow." "Would you believe me if I said it was all a big misunderstanding?" Elena asked hopefully. "No." "Then yes, sir. I'm absolutely planning to fight a Galactic Warlord tomorrow." Rodriguez dropped into the seat across from her, scattering a group of hovering spectators. "You do realize Cathax once defeated a Jovian battle mech with his bare hands?" "Really?" Elena's eyes lit up. "That's awesome. I wonder if he'll show me how he did it after I beat him." "This isn't a joke, Chen. The Academy Board is having fits trying to figure out how to stop this without causing an interspecies incident." He leaned forward. "Cathax is currently in the elite training room, going through his pre-combat ritual. He's broken 3 reinforced punching bags." Elena took another bite of her burger, chewing thoughtfully. "Only 3? Must be having an off day." In the elite training room, Cathax was indeed preparing for battle, surrounded by an entourage of admirers and supporters. His movements were precise, each strike accompanied by traditional Drachnid war chants that echoed through the facility. Meanwhile, Elena's preparation consisted of finishing her burger, doing some light stretching, and watching cat videos on her holopad. Her fellow human cadets had set up camp in her room, offering increasingly ridiculous advice. "You could challenge him to a dance-off instead," suggested Cadet Thompson. "Or remind him that technically humans are classified as Death World species," added Cadet Patel, scrolling through xenobiological classifications. "Or," Elena said, standing up to demonstrate, "I could use the fact that he's expecting a formal duel to absolutely destroy his assumptions about human combat." She proceeded to demonstrate a combination of moves that mixed Brazilian jiu-jitsu with parkour and street fighting, ending with a flourish that had her fellow cadets whooping. As lights out approached, a message flashed across her holopad. "Cadet Chen, report to the meditation garden." Elena found Extal waiting there, crystalline form glowing softly in the artificial moonlight. "I have been analyzing Drachnid combat footage for 6 hours," her friend chimed. "Their species has a critical weakness." "Oh?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "They can't handle being laughed at." Extal's facets sparkled with amusement. "Their honor-based culture makes them extremely susceptible to... what do you humans call it? Trolling?" Elena's grin grew wider. "Extal, my brilliant friend, I think tomorrow is going to be even more fun than I planned." Back in her quarters, Elena set her alarm and crawled into bed, dreaming of all the ways to turn a Drachnid warlord's natural advantages against him. Her last thought before drifting off was that Cathax really should have researched humans better before challenging one. After all, humanity hadn't survived and thrived across the galaxy by playing fair. They'd done it by being the most adaptable, unpredictable, and occasionally infuriating species in known space. And tomorrow, one very pompous warlord was going to learn that lesson the hard way. The Academy's combat arena looked like someone had thrown ancient Rome into a blender with Star Trek. Holographic barriers shimmered around a circular fighting space, while floating platforms at various heights gave spectators a perfect view of the upcoming entertainment. The stands were packed with every species of the Intergalactic Alliance, creating a rainbow of scales, tentacles, crystals, and various appendages. "I've never seen the arena this full," muttered Captain Rodriguez. watching from the instructor's platform. Even the hive mind sent representatives. He gestured to a cluster of insectoid beings sharing a single bucket of what appeared to be radioactive popcorn. Elena stood in the preparation chamber, rolling her shoulders. She'd shown up wearing standard PT gear, shorts and a tank top with Human Division printed across the back. The sight had caused several alien officials to protest that she wasn't wearing proper combat attire. "What do you mean this isn't proper combat attire?" Elena had asked innocently. "It's what humans wear to fight. Would you rather I showed up naked? That's also historically accurate for human combat." The officials had quickly withdrawn their objections. A thunderous fanfare announced Cathax's arrival. The Galactic Warlord emerged wearing ceremonial battle armor that gleamed under the arena lights, his scales shifting through patterns of intimidating colors. His entrance included a personal shield generator, 2 weapon drones for holding his cape, and what appeared to be his own background music. "Somebody really likes their dramatic entrances," Elena commented to no one in particular. "Think he hired a choreographer?" The arena's AI announced the combat parameters. "This is a demonstration match between Warlord Cathax of the Drachnid Empire and Cadet Elena Chen of Earth. Standard Academy safety protocols are in effect. Victory conditions: submission, incapacitation, or yield. Lethal force is prohibited." Cathax strode to the center of the arena, his tail sweeping dramatically behind him. "Cadet Chen, step forward and face your doom with whatever dignity your species can muster." Elena walked out while checking her ponytail. "Sorry, could you repeat that? I was fixing my hair and missed the whole doom speech thing." A ripple of confused murmurs ran through the crowd. Cathax's frills darkened with anger. "You dare mock the sacred traditions of combat?" "Sacred traditions? Oh wait, was that what all the sparkly armor and cape-holding drones were about? I thought you were auditioning for the Academy musical." Elena bounced lightly on her toes, warming up her muscles. Cathax roared and charged, his massive form moving with surprising speed. Elena simply stepped aside, causing him to rush past her with all the grace of an angry rhinoceros. "Marco!" she called out cheerfully. Cathax spun around, his tail whipping through the air. "What sorcery is this? What is Marco?" "Oh, come on." Elena ducked under another swing. "You didn't research human combat games at all, did you? Polo!" The crowd watched in bewilderment as the mighty warlord repeatedly failed to land a single hit on the seemingly casual human. Elena moved like water, each dodge flowing into the next, occasionally adding unnecessary flips just because she could. "Stand still and fight properly," Cathax demanded, his pristine armor now showing signs of strain from his exertions. "But I am fighting properly," Elena replied, sliding between his legs and popping up behind him. "This is how humans fight big, scary predators. We let them tire themselves out while looking fabulous." In the stands, Extal was providing commentary to a group of fascinated aliens. "Notice how she maintains constant verbal engagement while evading. Humans call this technique trash-talking. It serves multiple purposes: distraction, psychological warfare, and entertainment value." "Enough!" Cathax bellowed, his frills now a dangerous shade of crimson. "Face me with honor!" Elena paused, standing perfectly still for the first time since the fight began. "You know what? You're right. Let's talk about honor." Her voice lost its playful edge. "You came to our academy, insulted my species, and expected us to just take it, because you've got some shiny scales and a fancy title. That's not honor. That's just being a bully with good PR." The arena fell silent. Even Cathax seemed taken aback by the sudden shift in tone. "So?" Elena settled into a proper fighting stance, her eyes gleaming. "How about we start this fight for real? No more games, no more jokes? Just you, me, and a lesson about underestimating humans that you're never going to forget." Cathax's expression shifted from anger to something approaching respect. He discarded his ceremonial cape and deactivated his shield generator. "Perhaps," he rumbled, "there is more to your species than I first assumed." "Oh, buddy," Elena grinned, "you have no idea." The atmosphere in the arena shifted as Elena and Kethax circled each other. Gone was the playful dancing and mocking banter, replaced by an intensity that made the air crackle with anticipation. "I've studied every known fighting style in the galaxy," Kethax declared, his movements measured and precise. "Whatever technique you choose will be useless against me." "That's the thing about humans," Elena replied, her footwork subtle and constant. "We don't stick to one style. We take bits and pieces of everything that works, throw out what doesn't, and make something new. We call it adaptation." She demonstrated by launching into a combination that mixed Muay Thai strikes with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu footwork, flowing seamlessly into capoeira-inspired evasions. Kethax found himself defending against attacks from angles he hadn't known existed. In the stands, the alien spectators were frantically updating their xenobiology databases. "Impossible," shouted a Mercurian scientist. "Her muscle density shouldn't allow for that level of force generation." "According to my calculations," added a floating brain in a jar, "she should have exhausted her energy reserves 7.3 minutes ago." Exthal's crystalline form vibrated with amusement. "You're all missing the point. Humans don't operate on should or shouldn't. They operate on will or won't." Kethax landed a powerful blow that would have crushed a lesser opponent, but Elena rolled with it, using his own momentum to flip over his shoulder. She landed in a three-point stance that would have made any superhero proud. "Not bad," she said, wiping a trickle of blood from her lip. "But have you considered one crucial factor about human combat?" "And what?" Kethax panted, his scales dulling from exertion. "Would that be?" "We're really, really stubborn." Elena launched herself forward, her next series of strikes targeting pressure points that Master Wong had sworn would work on any bipedal species. Judging by Kethax's surprised grunt, the old master had been right. The warlord's movements were becoming slower, his legendary stamina finally meeting its match in human endurance. Each time he thought he had Elena cornered, she would slip away, landing quick strikes that slowly but surely wore him down. "This is unprecedented," muttered Captain Rodriguez to the Academy board members. "She's using his own fighting style against him, but with human unpredictability thrown in." Indeed, Elena had started mimicking Kethax's formal Drachnid combat moves, but with distinctly human twists. Where Drachnid fighting emphasized power and dominance, she added flexibility and improvisation. When he expected her to retreat, she advanced. When he prepared for an attack, she would start humming show tunes. "Getting tired?" Elena asked, ducking under a tail swipe that was notably slower than his previous attempts. "Because I could literally do this all day. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, you know. We used to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion." Kethax's next strike missed entirely, his mighty frame showing signs of fatigue that no Drachnid warrior would ever admit to experiencing. "Your species is infuriating," he managed between heavy breaths. "We get that a lot," Elena replied cheerfully. "Usually right before people realize they should have taken us seriously from the start." With timing that would have made a choreographer weep with joy, she launched into her final combination. A feint to the left drew Kethax's guard high, leaving him open for a sweep that even his tail couldn't counter. As he struggled to maintain balance, Elena's fist connected with a precise point under his jaw. Not hard enough to cause damage, but perfect for activating the pressure point that Master Wong had specifically mentioned. The mighty warlord Kethax, terror of 17 systems, wobbled once and fell flat on his back with a crash that rattled the arena's foundations. The silence that followed was deafening. Thousands of alien spectators stared in shock as Elena casually walked over to her fallen opponent and looked down at him. "So," she said, offering a hand up, "want to talk about those natural advantages again?" For exactly 3 seconds, The arena remained in perfect silence. Then it exploded into chaos. The hive mind representatives buzzed so excitedly they knocked over their radioactive popcorn. The floating brains in jars were running calculations so fast their containers steamed. Even the crystalline beings were vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter nearby windows. Kithax stared at Elena's offered hand for a long moment before accepting it. His massive frame rose with a grace that seemed impossible for someone who'd just been thoroughly defeated. "In 3 centuries of combat," he rumbled, "no one has ever—" He paused, his frills shifting through colors so rapidly they resembled a malfunctioning disco ball. "No one has ever made me look quite so foolish while simultaneously earning my respect." "I aim to innovate," Elena replied with a grin. "Though I have to admit, that pressure point under your jaw was a shot in the dark. My old master just said it would work on anything with a spine. Turns out he was right." The warlord rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "You knew of this weakness in drachnid physiology?" "Nope, just figured it was worth a try. That's another human thing. We make up a lot of stuff as we go along." Captain Rodriguez pushed through the growing crowd, looking like he couldn't decide whether to court-martial Elena or recommend her for immediate promotion. Cadet Chen. That was the most reckless, unprofessional, and unorthodox display of combat I've ever witnessed. "Thank you, sir." That wasn't a compliment. "I'm choosing to take it as one anyway, sir." Before Rodriguez could respond, the Academy's board members descended upon them. The following hour involved a lot of excited scientific babbling, several requests for Elena to demonstrate various moves, and at least 3 proposals to study human genetics for military applications, all of which Elena politely but firmly declined. The betting aftermath was even more chaotic. Zix's tentacles were tied in literal knots trying to process all the payouts, especially to the human cadets who'd bet on Elena. "You knew," the Mercian accused as he transferred credits. "You all knew she could win." "Not exactly," Cadet Thompson replied, collecting his winnings. "We just knew better than to bet against human spite and stubbornness." Later that evening, Elena found herself sitting in the Academy's dining hall across from Kithax, who had swapped his battle armor for more casual attire, though his medals still chimed with every movement. "Your species," he said, carefully manipulating eating utensils designed for much smaller hands, "is deeply confusing. We get that a lot too." "You could have ended that fight much sooner." Elena shrugged. "Maybe. But then you wouldn't have learned anything, and neither would they." She nodded toward the dining hall's other occupants, who were trying very hard to pretend they weren't eavesdropping. Kithax's frills shifted to a thoughtful blue. "The Academy Board has asked me to extend my stay. They wish me to develop a new combat training program, in collaboration with you." "Really? Cool. First lesson can be how to fight without background music and cape-holding drones." The warlord's booming laugh startled several nearby diners. "Perhaps in return you can teach me that move you used to slide under my tail. For purely academic purposes, of course." "Of course," Elena grinned. "Though fair warning, it works better if you hum your own theme music while doing it." The next day, the Academy's combat training curriculum underwent its first major revision in 50 years. New classes included adaptive combat techniques, psychological warfare through humor, and why you should never underestimate species from death worlds. Elena's victory sparked a trend of human combat instructors being requested across the galaxy, though none quite matched her unique blend of skill, sass, and showmanship. As for Kithax, he returned to the Drachnid Empire with a changed perspective and a collection of human action movies, determined to understand how a species could be simultaneously so formidable and so ridiculous. Years later, when asked about the fight, Elena would always say the same thing. The best part wasn't winning. It was watching an entire galaxy realize that humans are basically space possums. We look harmless, we're actually terrifying, and we'll probably laugh while taking you down. And somewhere in the Academy's database, there's still footage of a human cadet teaching a Galactic Warlord how to do a cartwheel while humming the theme from Rocky. Some say it's required viewing for all new xenobiology students, labeled simply Exhibit A. Why humans are classified as Deathworlders. They don't know when to quit. The end.